So we're just waiting one moment for everybody to join the webinar. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and where you're from, that would be brilliant in the chat box. And don't forget to put all panelists and attendees when you make a comment. And we'll just give it literally 30 seconds. And welcome to everyone across the world. From Spain, where it's currently 36 degrees in this room. So my brain is boiling. Okay, right, so I'm going to get going. This is our final webinar in the Parenting with a Coaching Mindset series. And today's webinar is about parenting with unconditional positive regard and empathy. And as coaches, this is a topic that is very close to our hearts. Empathy and unconditional positive regard are like in our blood as coaches, and it's something that I'm really familiar with, but many people aren't in the world, and it would be so good to implement this into parenting and for children to learn as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. First off, I'd like to introduce the panelists here. We have Ram Ranathan, and I hope I'm pronouncing names right because I usually pronounce them wrong. Apologies if I do. And Ram is the founder of Coach Arya. He is a master certified coach, and he is a father and grandfather, so we get those different perspectives. We have Kamal Smriti. Kamal is actually Dr. Kamal Smriti, sorry, a parent and coach and founder of Namita, let me get this right, of Namita Coaching Services. And we also have Smita Ragam, and I hope I've said your surname right, Smita. And Smita is also a mum of 2 boys, if I remember rightly. And she's also a program manager at Coach Arya and very passionate about coaching. So that's our team for today. Please, as I said, put any comments, questions, your experiences of parenting with unconditional positive regard and empathy in the chat box. And don't forget to join us as well after this webinar on the Parenting with a Coaching Mindset group on LinkedIn. And feel free to contact us as well. I'm Leah Black. I am currently helping Coach Arya set up a youth program. So if you go onto the Coach Arya website, youth, you'll see all that we're doing. We're going to do a life and leadership course. It's going to be free on demand for young people all across the world, for 15 to 25-year-olds, although you know, it hits any age really. Okay, and here we go. So Ram, if you don't mind joining the webinar now, I would like to ask you, what is unconditional positive regard?
Okay, I think the term that we use, at least in the Coach Arya context, and I'm sure there are multiple interpretations of what it is, dictionary meanings, is based on the Carl Rogerian philosophy of client centricity, where he talks about unconditional positive regard as perhaps the most important factor in terms of, at that point in time, he as a psychotherapist, as a psychiatrist, it was primarily with respect to therapists who were working with patients, and where the norm was that the therapists, the doctors knew everything that they had to know about the patient, and it was the people who came to them, they were not treated as customers or clients of value, but they were just about patients. There were some people to be diagnosed, and then some pronouncements to be made, some judgments to be given, and so on and so forth. And he wanted to shift that whole system into something very different. And basically his approach was, which is extremely radical at that time, and it was resisted for a long time by the American Psychotherapist Society, of which he eventually became the president and became the father of counselor movement, and I believe of coaching as well, is that at the heart of it, the person who comes to you for help knows what is right or wrong about that person, and they have the solutions within themselves. And whoever the other intervener is, whether it's a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist or a coach or trainer, they really don't know anything about it. All that they know is certain processes, certain frameworks, and they believe that they have certain knowledge, but they don't have the wisdom of what's really happening in the minds of the client, the patient. And so Carl Rogers' theory, based on the humanistic theory of Abraham Maslow, was that the client has all the answers, and therefore the client should be treated with tremendous amount of respect as an equal and allowed to be explored in a way and not to be told about what the problem is. And that is the genesis of the whole concept of unconditional positive regard. The positive regard here is not about merely one of compassion. It's not about love. It's not about, perhaps they are, but the primary condition here is that you believe that the patient is coming to you in a state of mind where the state, irrespective of how the person appears to be, has the answers within. And those answers can be uncovered through exploration with the client in partnership. And to me, that's a fundamental principle of unconditional positive regard. And of course, it then does get interpreted into multiple things. The way that you treat the client, when you treat them as equal, when you treat them with deference, with respect, you necessarily feel a certain sense of compassion in terms of where they are at and how you can support them in moving out of that state. And that evolves into many other positive feelings as well. But primarily, the unconditional positive regard is arising out of this simple equation that the therapist or the coach or the counselor, whoever is the intervener in this particular situation, is just equal to the person who is coming for help. They are not unequal to us. I think that if that fundamental principle is understood, everything else can follow from there. Let me stop there.
Thank you, Ram. And we'll talk in a moment about how unconditional positive regard can actually be applied to parenting and even taught to children, and have a bit of a discussion about that. Just in case anyone here is interested, I highly recommend this book, which hopefully you can see. It's Carl Rogers and On Becoming a Person. It is a long read. It's a big book. It'll keep you entertained, but it's beautiful. And it gives so many insights into how to be a fantastic person. And to put very simply, I guess unconditional positive regard, taken from the words of Carl Rogers, is accepting and supporting a person for who they truly are, no matter what they say or do or bring. It's trying to be able to accept and support them and understand them. And because we're going to talk about empathy as well, I'd really like Kamal to just introduce the concept of empathy, and then we'll get into the full discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leah. It's quite curious that you asked me to introduce the concept of empathy, because the concept or the ability got introduced in my life via theater. So in college, I was actively participating in a lot of theater activities. We would do plays and all. And that, I think, is the best way for me to understand empathy, because I believe that if there is one thing that I've taken away from theater, that's empathy. Because what you do is you are your own person, but when you're on the stage, when you're participating in an act, you're portraying a different character. You're not you, you're a character. So what you need is, simply put, you step into the shoes of the character. You step under the skin of the character and understand, and then be the character. And that exactly, I think, is empathy. That is to put yourself in the other's place and see how things are, how life is. And that ability or you can say that skill is empathy, that you're not trying to understand somebody from your space, but you are identifying with the person through their own space and leaving you aside as a person, as an individual.
As being anyway as near important as could have been if it was about raising our own children. But that apart, today that we have grandchildren, and the eldest of ours is 6, uh, you use the word from the perspective of a child. I would put it somewhat differently. I don't think you really want to understand them from the perspective of a child. You want to understand them from their perspective, wherever they stand. I think that's extremely important. I think whatever age they are, if, again, using that phrase in a larger framework, unconditional positive regard, is about treating them as maybe young adults or whatever word that you want to use, as completely equals, and trying to understand the perspective wherever they are coming from. And to me, the amazing part is that even when this little girl was hardly about 3 or 4, and she would come up with things which were far, far beyond her years. And it's very easy to say, hey, how cute, or whatever it is, the equivalent of, treat her as a child. But instead, we did treat her with respect. We treated her with, okay, what do you mean by that? I still remember a conversation that, which was hardly about 3 years old or whatever, and my wife and I were in Chicago. Our granddaughter came and spent the night and the day with us. And she was extremely young. I mean, at that age, and it's not that she was growing up with us, because we used to go there only on holidays and things like that. But still, we had a bond with her, and she came over, and then she was absolutely fine, very independent in terms of what she did, and she would walk about a couple of miles without complaining at the age of 3. And somewhere, something about that happened, and she said, "Oh, it's so frustrating." At the age of 3, for a kid to use the word frustrating in a context that was very relevant, that was not borrowed, imitated, was, it just threw us back a bit. So, but instead of responding in any other way, reacting in any other way, we just asked her, like you would to an adult. So, why do you think it's frustrating? What makes it frustrating? So, what's happening out there? And she was telling us about how the situation in her point of view made it frustrating for her. It made tremendous amount of sense. So, if only we have the absence of judgment, that we are talking to a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, that we are talking to another human being. At that point in time, can we put that person at the same level as our intelligence? And I've used that word talking to you and other people in our cohort, the mastery level, is that, can I come up to her level rather than saying, can I come down to that child's level? I think it's pretty puerile to my mind to say, can I come down to my child's level? You're not. You're really coming up to the child's level, because the child's level is so much more innocent, pure, curious, spontaneous. And we adults are total opposite of all that. So are we able to get into that state? And so what I usually talk about to you guys and the class and other places very often is these conversations, which I hope one day I might be able to put it together in a book once I have a sufficient amount of data on that, is Uh, when she goes to school, normally she gets driven by her dad. But when I'm there, usually, uh, instead of his dropping her at the school bus, which is almost about a mile away, which is quite a distance. It takes about, for me, as an adult to walk in about 15 minutes. With her, it takes about 20 to 25 minutes. So we walk there, and I just take her bag, walk with her. And so we have these conversations about whatever happens. So a couple of weeks, 3 weeks that we spend with her pretty much 5 days a week. Once in the morning, once in the afternoon when I pick her back. And these conversations range from anything from, I don't know, from dinosaurs at one level to, which then leads to the whole concept of evolution, and not just evolution of things in the earth, how the universe evolved, and then into other elements of why there is poverty in this world. Why is it that in some places children cannot go to school? What is it that we can do about that? What is it that I can do about it? There's some question that she might ask. So it's a totally different kind of a conversation that I can hold with her. Very often I cannot hold with any adult. For one thing, for my need to sort of prove a point with an adult, or for the other person to show me that that person knows. Here there is absolutely no pretenses. And you are able to communicate at a level which is totally pure. Now, if we are able to do that with one another and learn from the way that we can interact with a child, and then elevate that to the way that we can deal with others, I think this world will be a better place. So yeah, that's my experience as a grandparent, and so to some extent, this I find today, for example, if I were to interact with okay, the 6-year-old is an extreme, right? Or a 3-year-old for that matter. But generally, I find it's far more easier for me to interact with a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old than for many of their parents, and for a 40 or a 50-year-old. They have a generation gap. I don't, honestly. Partly it is learned, partly it's just firm belief in this fact that they truly know something more than I do, and I can learn from them. And if I'm just open, if I'm vulnerable, and I think all things happen. Of course, having said this, because there's a truism that the parents bear the burden, the grandparents don't, and therefore the grandparents can afford to be relaxed. Like our own children have to enforce rules and regulations, how much TV you can watch and what you can eat and so on and so forth. We, when we are there for a short period of time, can afford to sort of take off those boundaries and stuff like that and let the parents suffer later. That's also a possibility. But I think there's a balance that we can reach in terms of what the boundaries are. And I think children accept that. And children, as they grow up, they necessarily appreciate the need for boundaries. Because if you do not have boundaries, they also know that you don't care. You have boundaries because you care. Like in the US, my son especially is pretty paranoid about the safety of those children. Is forever absolutely on guard. And they don't take it negatively, they take it very positively. So when I talk to them, they say, yeah. I mean, dad is so worried that something might happen to us. So he wants us to be careful. He wants us not to do that, not to do this. We understand why, even if they rebel. So I think it's a matter of really, showing them that respect, treating them as equals. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ram. And what you said really resonated with me as a youth worker and working with young people for many, many years is, boundaries are really important, for one, but two, we can help young people as adults to not follow all those social norms that are placed upon people to conform, or all this. What I'm trying to say is, let's say, for example, I'm working with a young person who is in a gang, and people will say to me, oh, how can you do that? How can you work with this person? They're a criminal, they're this, that. Well, actually, they're a child, and we need to see the world from their perspective and why they may have got into that gang, why, you know, they're needing that space in their lives. What is it? And try and understand from their perspective. And a lot of people put their opinions on the children and their points of view. And when I've worked with young people in gangs or associated to gangs, and I've actually tried to understand them and asked, you know, what is it? What's happened for you to be in this space? And you just understand so much more than you ever would have by making all these presumptions. Many of the children will tell me it's to belong. You know, I don't have a family, so this is my way of belonging. This is my way of gaining support. Some young people might think it's a way to become famous, and how are we ever going to educate young people or help young people to become amazing adults if we don't understand why they've got into these things? And when I work with young people that have behavioural difficulties, and colleagues or whoever will go, oh, you know, Leah, why is it they behave so well with you? You know, why are they not naughty when they're with you? It's like, because I just try and find out what the behaviour is and see it from their perspective, see what's going on from their eyes, and not make any judgments. And that is, you know, the start of relationships, that communication, that understanding. And Kamal, I'm wondering, someone's posted a question. Oh, it's disappeared. We've got many questions now. One moment. Before, which said, can you share an example of understanding the person, so maybe the child, the young person, the parent, from his or her space?
Yeah, thank you, Leah. I saw that question also. I was just waiting patiently for my turn to answer that. That's incredible. And while Ram was explaining, you know, it was also occurring to me, like when my grandparents would speak to me, that conversation had a very different texture. And when I became a mother myself, you know, I started to understand my parents' perspective quite a lot and started to realize that perhaps because they were pressured with everyday life, you know, decisions or situations, and that's why the conversations with them were not having that sort of a texture that I had with my grandparents. So that helped me realize. Now, coming to the example, it's said that every situation can be explained in at least 3 different stories. You know, there could be more versions, but at least 3 versions of stories are always there. My version, your version, the third person's version, right? And so if we realize, and in coaching, especially in NLP, there is a technique also, which is called as perceptual positioning technique, where you try and understand and explain a situation, putting yourself in 3 different places of perception. Now, I realized about this technique only when I started to, you know, learn about coaching. But what I also realized is that this is something which I was already doing in my life. I just didn't know that there is a term that exists for it. So there are so many different ways in which we be with people, with ourselves. Give an example to Vinita, what's coming to me is something that has happened recently when my teenage daughter had a huge toothache, and you know, she was suffering for many days, and because of the lockdown I couldn't take her to dentist immediately, so we had to wait quite a lot, and she was in so much of pain. So being her mom, what came into me, of course, you know, she was in pain, but I felt, you know, some sort of an anger also rising in me, and I was thinking, like, why doesn't she take care of her teeth so many time and over again when she knows that her teeth are so vulnerable? You know, she should be doing this, or she should be taking care of her. And of course those feelings were there, and I was realizing them. But in that moment, asking that question when she's already in pain and hurt is not the right thing for me to do. That is a conversation I can leave, I can let go, I can leave for some other day. In that moment, understanding that she's already in pain, what is it that she needs from me is the first thing. To realize that, although as a mom, I would have all the past and future coming to me. If she continues to be like this, what will she grow into? And then she will always have troubles. But that's has to go in the background. And that I can understand only if I'm holding that space for her. If I'm also thinking that, there must be something there. There must be some reason why she is not taking care of herself the way she should, you know. So I need to understand it from her perspective. If I want to help her make it better, because to point a finger on somebody from your own judgment and say that this is not good, I've learned that you can never help anybody or never bring any change for any person. Rather, you'll create huge blockades. But if I have that openness to learn something new about her from her own perspective and hold a space and say that, okay, my agenda is my agenda, but right now I have to understand what is her agenda. Where is she coming from? Why she eventually came to a place where she's in so much pain, and right now what is required. So I just was with her throughout that entire week. Eventually we went to a dentist and then we checked. And then later on, when she was in a state, in a moment where she was comfortable enough that, okay, I've been with her, we've had a different conversation. And understanding what will work for her eventually, helped me be able to help her. If I would have gone with my own thoughts and judgments and though this is how I used to do, why doesn't she do? Because she's a different person. Yes, she's my daughter, but she's a person of her own. She has her own mind. She has her own way of comprehending what's her life stage she is in, Maybe she just wants to relax. Maybe she just want to uh, not take things so seriously in at some point of time. So instead of just thrashing and trying to say that, okay, it's my agenda and my agenda is better than your agenda, no, that doesn't work. Having unconditional positive regard is like trying to understand what is your agenda and helping the person realize whether your agenda is working for you. So I think that's what it is, a mutual exploration and being open to learn something new in the given situation. And I don't know if that example sort of fits, but
thank you, Kamal.
that came to me. Yeah.
It does. And Vanita said thank you. And actually, when you're talking about non-judgment and the person being themselves, I had a conversation last week with Smita. And Smita, I'd love you to give your example with your child, if possible. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. I really loved what Ram said that, come down to a child's level and we assume that, we are at a higher level when we say that. So for non-judgmental, recently there was an instance where we borrow books from Just Books, that's a library here. And my child was, just saying that I want to start a library of my own. And we were like, and why do you say that? What makes you say that you want to start a library of your own? And he wants to charge money and lend his books. And we were kind of, zapped by when we heard that. But then obviously we wanted to know, and my husband and my son were having a conversation. And while I was just listening, it kind of made me think that, he's coming from somewhere, definitely. So he asked, so my husband asked my 10-year-old son as to, what makes you think that, you want to charge? You can just, maybe exchange books. and just, get some more books to read that way. He said, no, I see there are two benefits of, charging money. And he said, okay, so what are the benefits? While I was actually just thinking that, he's collecting money to buy a pet. Last year, it was his 10th birthday, December. And he said that, he wants a pet. We could not buy that time. So he said, now this December, I'm definitely going to buy a pet and I'm going to collect money for that. So we thought this, okay, so internally what it was going on with me was that he wants to, with this money, he's actually planning to buy a pet. So when he started talking about the benefits of taking money, he said, okay, so the first is when I am charging money, the person, my friend will take care of the book because he's paying for it. So he'll take care of it. And so what is the next point? He said, Dad is paying so much money, to Just Books to get me books. I'll help him with this money. And this was really, an eye-opener for me, in the sense that if I would have intervened there and just said that, okay, so are you taking to buy a pet? It would actually have just made him not share the benefits that he actually had. I think he has very good plans when he's wanting to take that money from friends. But yes, I think this is one very important thing. Like whenever a child is speaking, I think we just need to listen and not interrupt at all. I think they will definitely come up with something brilliant. This was one classic example for me where I think, just being mom, I kind of let him be what he wants to say. Another important, very important thing which I want to share is, when we label our kids for whatever reason, like again, I want to just share an example, and I hope this will help someone who's listening. Right? So again, my elder one, he's quite like we all eat a bit fast, maybe 15-20 minutes each meal. He takes quite a bit some time to finish. And knowingly, unknowingly, maybe we've called him a slow eater sometimes. I don't know. When I think back about it, I don't think so that it is deliberate, but definitely to make him, catch up with all of us, we would have told him something like that. Now, there was one day where one of my friend with her 3-year-old visited, and all of us just finished in 20 minutes while my elder one was still eating. So my friend just asked me, why are you taking so long? Is it spicy, or, are you not enjoying the food? So he said, no, auntie, actually I'm a slow eater. And that again, made me think so much on the fact that this word it's not his own. We have maybe over the time, just got this on his head. From that time, it was 2 years back, and I just wanted to, change the narrative as to how he looks. He still eats the way he eats. I don't want to say that word again, but now when I in front of anyone, if this happens again, and so what I just say is, he relishes his food. I mean, that's how he is. He enjoys being with his food for some time, and he's relishing. I see that there is an impact which is creating in him. He is definitely taking time. I'm sure with time this will pass through, but I think the narrative which has changed now for him, he's different. Even he's viewing it differently now. So yeah, that is what I wanted to just share, that, parents have to be very careful when, such things happen. We should avoid labeling our kids. We never know. They might believe that is the truth for themselves, and actually they might just believe in what they were, being labeled as.
Thank you for sharing, Smita. And I just wonder, are we born with unconditional positive regard and empathy? Or is this something that we learn? And if so, what age? Smita, go for it.
So I don't think so. This is related to age at all. Okay, again, I have a very great example to share. So when I am learning and using it for myself, I was also actually just sharing with my kids so that they can have that unconditional positive regard with their friends, with whoever they interact with. Uh, so it was just, 2-3 days back that we had the conversation, and we were just going in the car, and it was in Bangalore. It was a jam-packed road, while this person from behind was constantly honking. So my husband got a bit irritated, and he just said, do you want to fly off us and just reach ahead of us? And to this, my 7-year-old, just reacted and said, Dad, you don't know, maybe he has to go to the washroom. And that again, just, so I thought, okay, so this is something which is great happening. It is working out. That means, somewhere they are understanding that, the honking is not just to irritate the people on the road, and maybe there is an emergency, we don't know. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's something, maybe we're born with it, but we have to learn, and we have to teach our children more about empathy, talk about it. And for me, the world would be such a different place if we all spoke with children about emotions and feelings. What is a feeling, and try and understand that different range of feelings, and where we actually feel that feeling in our bodies. And that way it would really help divide so many issues in the world. Like, for example, we fear what we don't understand. So if we don't learn empathy and unconditional positive regard, and then maybe we go to another country, or we watch something on the news, or we hear about war, and we hear about all these bad things, we might make a judgment because we don't understand how other people's lives are. So I think it's something that we really should teach children. They're sponges. They're absolute sponges. And if all children could learn what feelings are, and I think that would be a really good discussion, actually, some ideas, easy ideas that we can use to teach children and parents and people out there in general on how to apply empathy and teach empathy and unconditional positive regard. I know, Kamal, when we first started this webinar, you mentioned theatre. I know for me, I've worked with groups of young people and tried to help young people understand, different cultures, different genders, different identities. So for example, if I'm teaching a group about LGBTQ plus communities and people who might identify as a different gender, and it's a way to help people understand and have empathy and unconditional positive regard for everybody, one of the best ways that I can teach that or help young people to learn is theatre, is drama, is literally acting out those different roles and how that might feel, and then having a discussion afterwards about those different emotions and how it might have felt for that other person when they were looking at the world from their perspective and their experience. And like I was talking before about, behavior and actually bullying and risky behaviors as well. If we taught empathy, maybe that would even prevent some children becoming bullies, and actually thinking before those actions happen, understanding what they're doing might hurt other people. Because let's not hide it, bullying is a very big issue worldwide. So that kind of tells me that not everybody has learned empathy and unconditional positive regard, and nor are they all applying it. So there's loads of different things you can use. I actually wrote an article at the beginning of COVID-19 to help parents with their teenagers in particular and children, and that talks a lot about unconditional positive regard and empathy. So there's some ideas in there. But for example, if you're watching a movie or reading a book with a child or a teenager, ask your child or teen what they think that character might be experiencing at that moment in the film or in the book, and what emotions, and can they put themselves in their shoes as much as possible and see the world from their point of view. There's like a dissociation between certain people from other cultures and countries as well. I remember when I was younger, people would, well, mum in particular, if you're someone, anyone in the family, if you don't eat your food, you do realize there are people dying in Africa. There are children that can't eat and can't have food. And I always thought, I don't really know what you mean. I don't know what you mean, or why you're saying that, or why that's actually important to me. And I never really fully understand it. And now I'm working in Africa and I can see from their other side. We need to learn these things. We need to share different perspectives, different lives, and different experiences across the world to be able to understand more, to reduce things like racism, to reduce things like bullying. Empathy, unconditional positive regard are at the absolute heart of this. Just something before I ask you on the panel your experience with your children and grandchildren. I know emotion cards are really good with children and teenagers, and showing an image on a face and having a discussion about that emotion. And there's some websites as well, Google them, how all different hundreds if not thousands of emotions that have been identified, and just looking into them. Do we really know what emotions are? If someone looks sad and grumpy to me, if I'm like this, maybe I'm not sad and grumpy, maybe I'm just really relaxed and concentrated on the webinar. And it's kind of having those conversations. So I would love some examples from the panel, please. Ram first, if possible, an example of teaching unconditional positive regard and empathy to a young person. You're on mute though, Ram.
Thanks. I just want to approach it from a slightly different perspective. There was a question from Ravi: how can a parent differentiate UPR versus teaching, telling, guiding the kid, and what you're asking as well. First of all, adding the fundamentals of any child psychology or evolution of a child. Just try to think of how we learn to walk. We didn't have a manual. Nobody taught us how to walk. We walked because we imitated others who walked. And that is how children learn. Why does a Trump become Trump? Because he came from a Trump. It's as simple an answer. Because you imitate somebody else, you play that role, good or bad, whether it works or not, and you know, all of you know that. If a person grows up, let's say, in a family where one of the parents is an alcoholic, you know that there is a possibility, higher probability of that person turning out to be one, or getting married to a person who is that, or whatever it may be. Similarly, whether it's bullying or it's emotion. So what you're doing primarily is forgetting that child is learning from what people around that child do, and then trying to teach that child to do something very different from what you are actually doing. So you tell that child, don't lie ever, something bad will happen to you, and somebody calls on the phone or something, and you tell the same child or your wife or someone else, another child, tell Papa is not at home, or Mama is not at home. So what are you telling that child? I mean, this happens every day 100 times in most of our lives. So we can talk about all highfalutin philosophies, or how we teach unconditional positive regard and all these kind of things. I don't think they are as important as our believing in what are the values that we want to imbibe in our children and making that a part of our lives. How many of us do it? If we do that, then we are respecting the children. We are respecting the heritage of life. I pulled up this particular thing. He's one of my most favorite poets, Khalil Gibran, the prophet. So I just want to read you about those of you who are here in this time. So if you haven't read it, please, for heaven's sake, read the prophet and many of the chapters about husbands and wives and children. He says, starts with this, somebody asks, Prophet, please tell us about children. He said, your children are not your children. That's a starting point. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. Though they are with you, yet they do not belong to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. I think that is the most important. Willy-nilly, the way we behave, we are actually making them like us. So if we, in a simple word to answer your question, if I'm in a position to treat others with unconditional positive regard, a child or a grandchild who grows up with me will learn to be able to do that. But if I'm an SOB, then the child will also grow up to be that, a bully or whatever it may be. I think this we forget. It's so easy to forget. I don't think there are any rules about parenting more important than this. And that's the most difficult, because then we have all excuses as to why we need to do what we need to do. Then why try to make our children different? They will also be doing all that they need to do, right? When you don't want to obey the traffic rules and you tell the child, no, you should obey the law. Why would they want to obey the law? You lie, you cheat, and then expect them to be truthful and honest. Why would they want to be that? They learn from us. Anyway, that's a huge story by itself. Not many people would want to hear that. But anyway, let me stop there.
Honestly, Ram, that was so lovely, and thank you so much for sharing that. Khalil Gibran and the Prophet for me is, as Ram said, read the book. It will change your life. And it's so short, you can read it in a few hours, and the inspiration in that book, the words of wisdom and truth that will change lives. I haven't met anyone that's read it and said it hasn't changed their life, so I recommend it highly. And I did post a video earlier on. It's TED Talks by Michelle Charfin, I think her surname is, and she basically talks about, if you're going to teach unconditional positive regard and empathy to your children, you have to start with yourself first. And if you can't do it, if you can't be a role model, then you ain't going to be teaching anybody. So journal, self-coach, look at yourself. And also don't judge yourself so much. If you're judging yourself, then that's not a good start, is it?
Yeah, I can't resist this. I just say this.
I knew I could see your face.
No. Just as you mentioned this, I remembered it. We had a session with Peter Hawkins on systemic coaching, and he was quoting from Mullah Nasruddin, not very different from Khalil, but of course he's supposed to be a fool. But Peter has compiled a whole book, which is actually, I have an autographed copy of it. So, I mean, cut a long story short, there's his mother who comes to Mullah Nasruddin and says, my child is taking too much of sugar. Now, what do I do? You are a wise man. You should be able to tell her something that will make her see differently. So Nasruddin thinks for a while and he says, come to me after 6 weeks and I'll be able to do something. So 6 weeks later, the mother brings with tremendous hopes. The child is still gorging on sweets. And so Nasruddin takes a child close to him and says, child, listen to me. Don't eat sweets. And then he says to the mother, it's okay, you take the child with you. I said, what's the big deal? This you had to wait for 6 weeks to tell her? And you think I couldn't have told her? No. Why did it take you so long, she asked. He said, I had to struggle 6 weeks to give up sweets. And then I could tell her with conviction, don't eat sweets. So it may sound like a full story, but that's exactly what you're saying. You have to be what is it that you want the child to be. It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Ram. Beautiful. And we only have about 5 minutes, but if we go over time 10 minutes, sorry if everyone doesn't mind waiting. I first would like Nishmita to pop onto the panel because she has explained a mirroring exercise to help with empathy before, and I would really love her to share that. So Nishmita, you're on mute.
Hi, can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so this exercise I actually learned recently when I was doing a theater workshop. I took part in one, and I thought that it was a really, really amazing exercise to teach empathy. So during that time, I was partnered with this man who was about like in his 50s, and the whole exercise is basically, we stand in front of each other and say, I'm the one doing the actions. He has to mirror me. And when he's doing the actions, I had to mirror him. And it should be such that anybody watching should not be able to tell who is the one leading and who's the one following. Where the empathy bit came in was, there was this time when I decided that I'm going to sit down. So I started sitting down and he couldn't sit as easily. And that just took me back for a second. And I was like, oh no, I have to wait and I have to be considerate, to think about the actions that the other person can do and cannot do. And in the same way, if I'm going to try and be too fast, like with my actions, it's going to be too difficult for him to follow. So I think that it's a very fun exercise to do with your children, and it just makes you automatically think about the other person, because you have to look into the other person's eyes and see what they're feeling. So it's very powerful. If you don't mind, I'd love to share another one. It just came to mind. It's role playing. And actually, Ram, I learned this in your house. I was a little kid, and I remember exactly where it happened. It was just at the entrance of your house. I'd come in to play with Apurva, that's Ram's niece, and I think, I don't remember what exactly it was, but Apurva's mother wanted to teach her how to greet me properly. So she gave it an example, and she pretended to be Apurva, and she played the whole role of greeting someone in. And then there was a practice session where Apurva had to do the same. And that one incident really stuck in my mind, and I thought it's such a powerful way to teach children how to empathize and just understand others better. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Nishmita. Thank you. I've got a few hands up at the moment and a few questions. But just to kind of continue with what Nishmita said, I've always looked at the random acts of kindness websites and ideas there, and they work beautifully with children. Writing a note to a friend or a family member or a neighbor and just telling them what you're grateful for that they've brought into your life is a fantastic way to show empathy and unconditional positive regard and just compassion in general. And it also helps us as people to grow. And I know some children, it's not for everyone this, but keep a journal, of a gratitude journal, acts of kindness journal, which is all these things in one, and it can really help us be a reflective person. I know myself, when I was a child, I didn't relate to people very well. Ironically, I'm a coach, it changes. And for me, when I was kind of practicing communication or understanding emotions and feelings and thoughts, I had my pets. And this actually works really well with children. I would try and understand my cat or my dog and why they were behaving in a certain way. So it doesn't always have to be about people. It can be about nature and pets and the world in general. So just to practice these things and really talk about them and have deep conversations about emotions. Okay, Kamal, you had your hand up. If you'd like to go, we've only got a few minutes left. Thank you.
I think in all this interesting conversation, I've sort of forgot what was the point that I was trying to raise in that moment. But I think what's really stood out for me out of what has been shared and what Ram has mentioned about Khalil Gibran also, I absolutely, when I read that poem, it blew my mind. Then it gave me a wonderful perspective. And I've had a habit of just, whatever I read, I have to practice it. I have to put it in my experience. And so lately I've stopped to read anything because anything new, so to say, because I have so many things that I still have to practice. And how it sort of showed up in my life with my daughter is like once we were having this conversation where she mentioned to me that she just asked me a question. She was just, I think, she was she was 7 or 8 probably at that point of time, and she asked me, Mama, when were you very happy? And a standard question, oh, when you were born. And she immediately, even before I would answer, she said, and don't tell me it's when you were born or when your brother was born. I was like, okay. So she was guiding me to, she said, when you were really, really happy. So this one incident or one event from my past stood really out to me. And I said, once when I was in college, I won a medal for Best Actress, and my friends came at my home to tell me in the evening that you won this. And I was so excited. I said I was the happiest on that day. And she said, okay. And then she said, oh, so you really liked doing that? I said, yes. And then she said, so why didn't you pursue it? I said, because I thought maybe your Nana, like her grandfather, my father, wouldn't approve of it as a career choice. And she gave me that look and she was like, don't tell me this was the reason. She said, so you didn't do what really made you happy just because you thought that Nana would be like, and I was broken and shattered that day. I was like, here I am, a mother who imagines and who thinks that that her daughter learns to be happy and to follow a path that she feels gives her immense satisfaction. And she is looking at a mom who didn't do it in her own life. I mean, how, what eventually is she going to learn out of it? Because somewhere, children have that kind of a loyalty to their parents that even if intellectually they think that their acts or their decisions were not right, a part of them always, out of loyalty, will say that it's okay. You know, if it comes to that, not pursuing what you really want is okay because your parents also did that. That counter argument sort of stays. And that point sort of made me move and shift my life drastically. And I made a resolution to myself that it can't happen like this. If there is something that I want for my children, I have to first have it in my life, because I can never get that excuse that, oh, I did it for you, I sacrificed for you. No, that's not how it happens. Children, as Smita mentioned, that show, not tell. So you got to start leading your life in a way, the way you want your children to learn, or the things that stand out. And I think that is exactly what Khalil Gibran also mentioned, that you be like them and you don't make them like the way you are. So, and it is difficult as hell. It's so difficult. You have to fight everything that you've come to learn and understand about yourself, everything there where you've invested yourself or your ego in, you have to shatter every block of that, every part of that. But one thing is there for sure: when you allow your children's inherent intelligence or that future that they are holding, or that promise and creativity in them to lead you, to guide you, it's worthwhile. Every pain, every difficulty is so worthwhile. I'm still in the process, still working on it, but it's really amazing journey. Yeah.
Thank you, Kamal. That was a lovely ending. And I think, does anyone else on the panel have just one very, very quick final message for any parents out there? And if not, I will round up. No hands are going up, so I think we're rounding up. And I just want to say the very last word: imagine a world where every single child and every single person can be authentic to who they are, be what they want to be, do exactly what they dream of. The word peace kind of rings to mind there, and empathy and unconditional positive regard are the journey towards that. So good practicing empathy, unconditional positive regard, parents and everyone else out there. Thank you very much, and continue this kind of journey with us. Join us on the LinkedIn group, Parenting with a Coaching Mindset, and contact any of us on the panel. We're all on LinkedIn and we're all on the Coach.io website. And if you have any children or know of any young people who you think would benefit from learning things like this, we are creating a free course for teenagers, as I mentioned before, and young adults. So register on our website. Thank you very much. Take care, and bye everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leah. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Komal. Thanks, Nishita.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.